Alright, welcome back everyone dito sa latest episode ng Deep Dive. Kanina lang, literally, we had Justice Antonio Carpio to discuss the latest inside the Philippines in terms of yung mga corruption scandals, things that the opposition should do, and accountability, and kind of a rule of law situation. And then we ended in terms of discussion of a rules-based international order. So I thought it's a perfect segue to our next guest. Talagang back-to-back tayo with Admiral Ong, retired Rear Admiral Romel Ong. Thank you so much, Admiral, for being back again with us on this show. I needed someone, as they say, amateurs do strategy, experts do logistics. Pag-usapan natin what's going on right now because as we speak, I don't know, there seems to be some compromise over Greenland. I don't know, US will have cantons around Greenland or Greenland. We can talk about the Arctic strategy. As we speak, the US is amassing an armada in the Persian Gulf and in the Mediterranean region. Some are suspecting if this is a kind of a gunboat diplomacy against Iran, if not something more dramatic. And then, of course, there are also big questions about what's happening in the West Philippine Sea. So, Admiral, what is the lay of the land right now, especially after the Maduro operation by the United States, which many believe really is the beginning of a new age, both in terms of implication for rules-based international order, but also it says a lot about military power and the technological sophistication of superpowers and the gap between them and the rest of the world. Can we discuss that from a more logistical military strategy point of view, Admiral?
Okay, first of all, Richard, thank you for inviting me. Good evening or good morning to your followers from UK.
Yeah, we have it
Okay.
now. Yes, you were
So,
saying,
Richard, if you recall, I presented this in a few years ago when you invited me for a studio interview, and we flashed this on the screen. Maybe that was 2 or 3 years ago. Okay. So this slide actually explains yung what we call the Chinese maritime axis of advance, no? Yung how it projects itself globally from the maritime front. So, if you look at yung pinaka nasa taas, that is yung northern axis, that is uh, yung northern axis of advance niya. And ang end point niyan would be Greenland actually. Okay? Kasi ang one of the explanation there is because of the climate change, the impact ng climate change, yung Arctic waters have become unfrozen. So pwede na siyang daanan ng barko.
yung middle corridor in particular, the expectation. Kasi
Yes,
may eastern corridor, may western, may middle corridor, right?
yes. The one that hugs the Russian coastline. So that opened up. And ang natural progression niya papuntang Arctic. Okay. So it's yung ruta ng China to Europe and again to Greenland. And that would explain away why Trump is interested in Greenland. Kasi ano yan yan yung ano niya, yung magiging frontier ano niya, buffer niya yan. Now yung middle one, yung tumatagos between Taiwan and northern Philippines. Tumatagos yan, then dumadaan yan ng Mid Pacific, then to the American continent. And that would explain why Trump is fixated on taking back Panama Canal. And of course, that would also explain why they had this incident in Venezuela, which led to the capture of Maduro, yung presidente ng Venezuela. Panama Canal provides the ingress-egress from the Atlantic side of the continent to Pacific. And yung Panama Canal na yon had saw significant Chinese investments around the canal itself. So yun yung concern nila kasi macho-choke yung because of Chinese presence, macho-choke yung Panama Canal. Okay, that would prevent yung movement of US Navy vessels to and from the the two major oceans. And itatagos yan further, ang bagsak niyan Venezuela. Why Venezuela? Oil. Okay? And of course, other resources. No? Venezuela represents maybe not a substantial source of oil for China, but just the same because of the vaunted oil reserve that is still a critical resource, no? Ang biruan nga namin, ano ko, no oil, no fuel, no Navy. The only way the Navy moves is if you have fuel. Okay? So that has strategic impact as well. So, ano. We might disagree on ano no yung the methodology of Maduro's ano fall and Trump's involvement in it.
You mean the legalities, to be specific?
Yeah, the legalities of it. But just for the strategy behind it, it is logical. From where Trump sits in the White House, it is logical. Okay. Then of course, yung other question mo about Iran, that is answered by yung third axis, the third one, which is passes through the South China Sea, Malacca Strait, then the Indian Ocean. Kasi that's the route papuntang Middle East,
Persian Gulf, yeah.
Africa. And Iran is also a critical resource for China in terms of oil. Okay, I think China buys oil more from Iran as compared to Venezuela. No?
Oh, so more than most countries kasi discounted siya, heavily discounted siya. Yeah.
So what you're looking at is yung economic containment of China from a wider expanse. Hindi yung traditional containment ng first island chain na pinag-usapan natin. Okay. And it's an economic containment. Granted, hard power yung in-employ sa Venezuela, but the objective was economic. Okay. So yun yung broad strokes, Richard, of what Trump is doing actually.
Can we go back to this because you referred to yung show natin on The View from Manila, yung earlier episodes, and thank you so much for joining us there. Actually, you came back to back with Elbridge Colby, who back then was not yet appointed. And we know that Elbridge Colby now is, of course, playing a very important role. He was one of the architects of the first national security strategy under the Trump administration in 2017. What is your read of the latest national security strategy? Because one of the readings is there doesn't seem to be a lot of emphasis on great power, rivalry, or portrayal of China as a systemic or pacing rival, which was also there in the Biden era national security and national defense strategy. By the way, the national defense strategy is also out right now. You can also check it out. I was checking out last night some of the analysis by my good friends at The Economist magazine, among others. So, is there a difference now in terms of Trump 1 and Trump 2.0? Or you just. Because the reason I'm saying this, Admiral, is remember last time we said ang problema ng US is kulang talaga siya sa industrial capacity to match China, right? I think it's very clear China is way ahead of everyone else in terms of manufacturing capacities at scale. And that has clear military implication. Some people are wondering whether what's happening at least in Greenland and Venezuela before we go to the Middle East, because there's also an Israeli aspect to that could explain a lot of things. But speaking of that, what do you think about this Dunroe Doctrine? Because one way to read this, Admiral, is if we cannot match China in terms of industrial capacity, and matching China means we have to work with our allies, and now I'm not really in the mood for multilateralism and doing all of those nitty-gritty, small yard, high fence kind of the risk strategy that Biden was doing. I'm just gonna go Dunroe Doctrine. So what do you think about this this kind of a Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine? Is this kind of a swashbuckling, just ram it through way? In a way, a logical step because masyadong komplikado if US wants to coordinate a kind of an industrial military strategy, counter strategy to a rising China. Do you see where I'm coming from, Admiral? Parang ang hirap kasi tapatan ng China in terms of rebuilding like this is the shortcut way. I'm just gonna kick out all the Russian, Chinese strategic presence in Latin America. I'm just gonna take over Greenland, secure myself in the Western Hemisphere, and then work it from there.
Okay, yung sagutin ko na yung first question mo, is there consistency between Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0? There's only one. His approach to China is economic. His approach to countering China has been consistently economic, not hard power, not military. There's that trying to the risk or to limit its vulnerability to China economic-wise. That started off in Trump 1.0. Ngayon, he's looking at yung chips. Then, of course, yung other vulnerabilities niya. No? Now, on the second point naman, yung industrialization, my sense is the US was a victim, unintendedly a victim of globalization. Okay? When it shifted from an industrial economy to an information-based economy, so it has to let go of that, yung factories niya, yung assembly plants niya. And where did they go? Specific lang to shipyards, shipbuilding. They went to Japan, they went to South Korea, they went to China. So si US, nag-deteriorate yung shipbuilding capability niya, and that manifests now in yung degradation ng kanyang US Navy. Nahihirapan siya i-rebuild yung fleet niya, and nahihirapan siya i-sustain yung operational readiness ng fleet niya. Basically because yung shipbuilding capability niya has significantly been degraded. So yun yung impact nun. Now, imagine a US na has global commitments but no longer has the capacity to actually act on those commitments niya. My sense was yung during President Biden's time, di ba, we were happy because marami siyang commitments na in support of the Philippines. But
Ukraine and then Israel, like lahat gusto niya sabayan, yeah.
But I think it was an overcommitment. Meaning, yung parang lawa yung puhunan pero hindi niya kayang i-execute because wala na yung instruments niya has been greatly diminished. Okay? So, punta nga tayo kay Trump. Yung third question is what is the Monroe Doctrine under Trump or yung Monroe Doctrine. Okay. Yung worldview ni Trump is Fortress America has been invaded. My Great Wall, the Great Wall of America has basically collapsed. And manifestation yan from his worldview would be yung pasok ng drugs sa American society. Second would be, and we might disagree on this, yung illegal migration. Okay, so those are to
out
him.
of control. Yeah. No. I think you're implying because I'm a progressive, I'll be automatically against. Let me be very.
Yeah.
Many of actually the Latinos who voted for Trump en masse were from the near border areas. So this is not like some racist people being against illegal migration. We see also Latino Americans feeling something is out of control. So who am I to disagree with these people?
So yun, those are the two main vectors, no? So makita mo, kung titingnan mo yung pag-upo ni Trump last year, sino unang pinuntahan niya? Si Canada at si Mexico. Okay? And basically is anong issue niya? Border protection. Because of yung pasok ng fentanyl in drugs and of course yung illegal migrants. Now, sa campaign niya and during yung first few months niya, Panama Canal pa rin. Because actually, yun yung una, even before Venezuela, Panama Canal yung nasa, niya eh. So makita mo, yung he was also looking at not only Fortress America, but yung second, yung outer tier of his Fortress America, which is yung periphery niya. And this is Central South America, and of course, pasok din yung Greenland, yung northern part. So he's fixing his wall, kumbaga. And I think, ang he's not confident engaging the world if he doesn't fix first yung bakod niya. And yun yung nakikita natin ngayon, yung is inward looking, make America great again, to restore yung restore yung capabilities niya, restore yung power niya. Yung military niya is not what it used to be. It is still very powerful, no? But of course, it was not what it was maybe 10, 20 years ago. May konting degradation there. So he's also looking at that, yung concern. So that may be what that fuels his reluctance to actually engage in commitments or engagements outside of yung Western Hemisphere. Okay, but of course you mentioned about yung possibility of spheres of influence. So I think that is not intentional, but that could be an unintended consequence of yung ginagawa ni Trump.
Exactly. That's my point. Like unintended consequence.
Yes.
Although some would argue, isn't Trump by I know Trump loves to schmooze and all, but like he seems to have genuine respect for not only Putin but Xi Jinping, and like some are saying maybe deep inside he's okay with the world of three czars kind of scenario. Like that's not really the worst thing in the world to him. In a ways, it is for the rest of us.
We have this conversation before. I think yung tinanong mo ko what ano yung worst case scenario. I said my worst case scenario is a modus vivendi between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump in East Asia.
A
Meaning,
condominium, a strategic condominium.
yes, parang, sige, ay, bahala ka na dyan. That's your sphere of influence. Okay, so tiningnan natin yung NSS, the only part of the NSS which kumbaga pwede nating i-hang on to was that critical din sa kanila yung South China Sea, importante sa kanila. So that's kumbaga core national interest nila as reflected in the NSS. So medyo ano pa tayo, medyo meron pa tayong konting tulog doon. But it doesn't mean na pwede tayo mag-relax. That's why in my some of my op-eds in the past few weeks o months, ang ano ko is balik tayo sa minilaterals arrangement. Kasi wala tayong choice eh.
It's like the middle power diplomacy naman I'm mentioning, and Mark Carney kind of was saying like mid-sized countries working together flexibly on specific issues.
Yes, kasi we're in the same boat eh. Japan, South Korea, Australia, may possibility bitawan din ni Trump yun, yung kanyang engagements doon. Okay. So, that gives us opportunity to actually work with these countries, work with these other middle powers, and come up with an alternative security architecture. Considering na lahat naman tayo doon, South Korea, Japan, Australia, Philippines, and maybe even Taiwan, are residents of East Asia to some extent. So meron tayong skin in the game, kumbaga, in making this part of the region peaceful and stable, and addressing yung ating big neighbor, yung ating China, of course.
Yeah, so if you were so okay, balikan natin. So are we saying Elbridge Colby, who most likely played a very important role here, did he retrofit his strategy here? I mean, obviously Trump calls the shot, but we know that there are really adults in the room, real experts who are conceptualizing these approaches and all of that. Like, what? So is this a natural evolution, or is this a kind of a parang okay, mag-real talk na tayo. Mukhang there's just so much we can do, therefore this is the way forward.
Well, it's a real talk. Kumbaga, we have if we really appreciate yung circumstance ng US, yung challenges niya, dapat kumayod na rin tayo kasi we cannot rely on them. Even if the heart is there. Okay. And if we talk to our counterparts in the US government, the heart is there na yung relationship is stable. But yung instrumentalities are they are not the same as we had. Okay. And they have also yung own interest, okay, nila to address.
Yeah, I just had to bring out this map para mas ma-appreciate yung map mo kanina. Admiral, di ba? You were talking about this China trying to break out in three different directions. Well, guess what? The Americans and others are also looking. So if you look at the world from this map, things kind of look different now, right? Like kasi, diba? Actually, doon sa top, pwede mo i-connect yung mga continents eh. And as you mentioned, ito yung middle passage sa Arctic. Of course, there's still a lot of ice here, but that could be changed in the coming decades. The Russian route is here, and then the other route goes through Canada here, right? So that's why you can see how important Greenland is for the United States. So basically, ito na yung grand strategy natin, di ba? If we were to play Brzezinski and Kissinger now, Admiral Ong, right? What you're saying is, what for the US, it's logical that when you're faced with two superpowers here, with some formidable other allies like Iran, for instance, and North Korea, among others, like if you're US right now and you feel like Europe is weak, and the Asians have already a lot on their plate here together with Australia, you want to make sure you secure this area, right? This Western Hemisphere. And then that puts you in a better position to deal with the challenge from Russia and China, who are also getting closer. Like this map, I think kind of better makes you understand the literally the big picture that strategists like Elbridge Colby will look at, right?
Right. Now, balikan mo yung yung engagement niya with Europe. Trump says to Europe,
Right,
you have to up your defense 5% GDP.
right.
Diba? Siningil. So lahat naman except for Spain work towards increasing yung nila contribution ng
Then,
GDP nila
sorry,
to
Poland is already
5%.
there. Poland is almost there. Poland is already almost there, diba? Dun sa
Yeah.
4% of GDP.
Parang sinasabi niya, you have to fix your own fence because I have my own problems. Yung may limitation, merong challenges yung US coverage of Europe or NATO. Yun ang sinasabi ni Trump. So sabi niya, you have to fix your fence. You have to also be able to respond to challenges in your own backyard. Okay, nung pumunta siya sa dito naman sa East Asia, ganun din naman sinabi niya. Although medyo hindi nag-resonate, dinedmaya siya. Ganun din sinabi niya sa Japan increase yung GDP to 5%. But even without that, Japan is rearming. Not because of Trump, but because of China. Okay? South Korea rearmed not because of North Korea alone, but rather because naging commercially viable yung defense industry niya. So, yun yung spin-off doon.
This is interesting, right? Because there are two different ways of reading this, Admiral, no? So parang sa isang banda, Trump is creating a permission structure. He's kind of normalizing this fears of influence thinking, not to mention suspicions that maybe a world of three czars may not be the worst thing in his mind, right? But at the same time, you can also read it in this different way that the second Trump shock and the risking from that is forcing and could force more and more capable allies, mid-sized country allies, or capable allies and partners like Singapore, for instance, or United Arab Emirates, not that big, but definitely militarily formidable, for these ones to really step up. And you think there could be some sort of correction if AUKUS, JAFUS, all of these different unilateral squads come together?
Hindi ko I mean, they're still there, no? Hindi naman binitawan ni Trump yung commitment ni Biden on, let's say, for AUKUS. So it's still there. But yung heart niya, I don't think is there already. Wala yung heart niya ron. And also remember, the US has also problems with yung rebuilding yung submarine capability niya. Kasi they have to decommission already. They have scheduled. They are bound to decommission some of their older submarines, and they have to replace them. So ang challenge doon is if you have your own shipbuilding issue, tapos ikakarga mo pa yung Australia in your equation, then parang parang pinukpok mo yung ulo mo ng martilyo you already have your own challenges to face. So I think the AUKUS is still there, no? But whether that can be implemented as designed, medyo skeptical ako doon.
What do you think we should do now? Okay, so whether we call it change of heart or real talk ng sariling America, realizing, wait, it's gonna be really difficult to do all the retrofitting and all, like rebuild our industrial base, do this long-term the risk from China, and we know Trump is not necessarily into that, like kind of a long-term 20-year strategic plan, right? Which you would need in order to deal with the challenge of the crink, or at least a Sino-Russian, because like Russia is a declining power in many ways, but its natural resources are immense, and its geography will be even more important in the coming decades because of the climate change. So if you're China, and if you maintain that alliance or whatever you want to call it with Russia, you're in a very strong position because you're building massively your technological industrial base, and then Russia will have all of those resources. It will be the food basket of the world. Who knows, maybe you can even have French style wine here down the road in 3 to 4 decades because of climate change. And then the Arctic by that time could be opening up. So if you're US and looking at that, and then if you're Trump looking at like your time frame of 2 to 3 years, what you're saying is that it makes logical sense to do really some aggressive scrambling and all of that. I want to ask you, Admiral, in terms of Europe, um, you talked about your skepticism about US being able to establish its manufacturing base. But what about Europe? I mean, it's not like Germany is pipsqueak when it comes to industrial capacity, right? It's easily number 3 or 4 in the world, right? France is not a completely irrelevant country. It's a nuclear power too. UK, for all of its deindustrialization, still is one of the biggest economies in the world. Do you think like Europe, plus the fact that you have rise of Poland and some of these more proactive players in Europe, could also rebuild its base? Because it's the second largest economy in the world, after all, one of the most prosperous area in the world. Top universities in the world are also here. Where do you see Europe going? Could Europe be a kind of a separate geopolitical entity in itself?
Well, there are two aspects to it, no? Yung capability and intention. No? So I do agree with you. They have the capability to actually build their armed forces if they need to. Kaya nga, kaya sabi ni Trump, just increase your GDP to 5%. 5% of GDP yung defense spending nyo. And it will solve by itself kasi ando naman yung technology tsaka yung industrial capacity nando naman eh. But do they want to or do they intend to? Kailangan pa ipilit ni Trump para they have to act on it. So I think Germany is rebuilding, started to at least. I don't know about the other countries. No, I do agree also that France has this is basically a very powerful has a naval capability. So Italy as well. But ano yan kasi since they're focused on number one yung internal concerns nila, tapos US has provided historically since post World War II. Siya yung security guarantor ng Europe for majority of the defense requirements. So it's yung paano mo i-win away from that dependence. Actually, it's the same problem from us with us. How do you win away?
Parang sila yung giant version natin.
Oo. So pareho tayo, we're in the same predicament. Kaya lang, Europe is in a more advantageous position because they have the capability if they want to.
So balikan natin ng Pilipinas at China ngayon. Like if you're China, how are you going to think about this? Let's do. So we did it from the Trump perspective, and we kind of said there's some method to the madness here. And the Europeans are very smart. They also know what's going on here, right? Although on the surface, because medyo mean talaga si Trump, the things he has been saying about British soldiers in Afghanistan, or mocking, Denmark openly about, it took like 7 hours for Germany to occupy, blah. Like that doesn't help. But that politics and noise aside, in terms of signals, if you're China right now, Admiral, how are you gonna move? Like how could China maximize this new world disorder? Also understand how we can respond.
They will try to reposition themselves as the a replacement to the US as the security guarantor or maybe yung I will be the world's best friend. Okay. If the US no longer is your best friend, ako na yung go-to person mo. That would be how I would reposition. Although nakikita ko dito sa Southeast Asia, I don't see how, particular sa atin, i-reposition niya sa sarili niya considering what's happening now in the social media space and media space. Okay. Yung bardagulan natin. So that would be a challenge. No? But it will require, remember, hindi naman to parang bago sa China kasi if you look at yung record, yung actions niya in the past few years, they are specifically designed to undermine the United States in different aspects, in different levels of power. So, for example, yung trying to shift, yung engagement with the Global South, with BRICS. Okay? Yung changing, encouraging other countries to shift away from the dollar to other currencies or actually to shift to yung digital, yung Bitcoin. That is one aspect of parang economic warfare yun. Okay. If you are trying to challenge the US, You challenge the US doon sa dollar. Okay? Second is yung sa United Nations, in different multilateral institutions. China-challenge din ng China yung leadership ng US. And in fact, medyo lamang siya in terms of actually co-opting some of the other states. And we've seen that. Kaya nga meron tayong agam-agam yung idea of yung ating arbitral ruling win, ipasok natin sa General Assembly for a vote. Diba? Kaya nga nag-hesitate tayo ron kasi baka ang boto ron pabor sa China because China basically is friendly to most of the third world countries in Africa and the Middle East and South America. So kaya nilang i-influence yung boto. Okay? And that may be the reason why Trump, kung makikita mo, parang is stepping away from the UN, stepping away from international institutions. Maybe that's a recognition because na-co-op na ng China yung mga critical institutions. And
Yeah,
that's
we see that in terms of marginalization of Taiwan, including the World Health Organization, just to put it dramatically.
Particularly the World Health Organization, that would be a very good case study of where China has exerted great influence and that has impact on the security of many countries, no? in different ways.
Absolutely. So balikan natin last part of our discussion, Admiral. Balikan natin ang Pilipinas. So the last time nung nagkaroon tayo ng masinsinan na diskusyon ukol dun sa mga operationally anong dapat nang gawin ng Pilipinas, you mentioned asymmetric capability development and all of that. What are the lessons you have learned, including from, I mean, we have a lot of lessons here. I mean, well, in the case of Venezuela, there was not much that happened, right? Like, because decapitation, that's it, right? Should we worry about China pulling off a decapitation strategy against us? And then on the asymmetrical warfare, what are the lessons from, like, for instance, how Iran stood up against two nuclear powers during the 12-day war? Basically, it was at least two nuclear powers plus the rest of NATO, and yet somehow it came down to a standstill. And we know that Iran has not used yet its naval asymmetrical capabilities, which could come into play in the coming days if ever there's a massive escalation. So what are the lessons for smaller, weaker countries when faced with much larger conventional powers?
I think kung decapitation yan, that would be more of a Taiwan thing rather than a Philippine thing. That wouldn't happen kasi we still have the Mutual Defense Treaty. If you do that, that's gonna be...
So ano na yan, activation na yan, yeah. That would be too stupid for them to discuss.
I don't think, I still, even if China behaves in a certain way na hindi ka kaaya-aya, I still believe they're a rational actor in this kind of discussion.
So what you were saying, rational naman yung ginawa kay Maduro. Was, by the way, an odious dictator. I'm like, good riddance to him. But
if you're going to exercise hard power tapos very clear ka on your core national interests, remember, war is the extension of policy by other means. So ibig sabihin, if you have exhausted all other diplomatic options, a state can still use yung military component niya to implement that policy. So, in-exercise lang ng US yung niya. We obviously will disagree with it, whether it's in terms of legitimacy or the morality of actually doing that. But that is one of the menu options available to any state. Okay? As long as kaya niyang i-execute yun.
Yeah, like Taiwan is a tough nut to crack. I mean, neither Taiwan nor I would say Philippines, we're not Venezuela. We're not a degraded dictatorial regime. But in 10 years from now, China could be a far more capable country, right? Because they learned a lot of lessons from the Gulf War, on information warfare, from the third Taiwan Straits crisis in the mid 1990s. They learned a lot, even from the Hainan incident 2001. Hindi kaya baka they will study carefully what happened to Maduro, how they completely shut down the defense systems and all of that, or decapitation through cutting deals with insiders, through cooptation, right? That decapitation did not happen without cooptation. So it was not just tactical genius. Hindi kaya pwede i-replicate yan, hindi lang sa Taipei, pero sa atin din down the road if we get a tough president in the Philippines na very strong on China?
As I've been consistently saying before, when we deal with China, we're dealing with China on two fronts. The first front is a West Philippine Sea, and it manifests in hard power. Okay. The other one that is yung other front where we are confronting China is within our own government, within our own society, and that is manifesting in terms of sharp power. So in terms of decapitation, hindi yan yung use of implementation of hard power like what happened in Venezuela. It will be more like buying of a very popular political candidate who has a possibility of becoming the president. That would be yung decapitation strike natin.
Yun yung co-optation. Like, why should you take them out if you can just buy them out?
Correct. Kasi that will not trigger the MDT. Diba? So, why go to the exercise of actually using hard power when it has, kumaga, in your calculation, that has more risk when the less riskier option would be just to buy them off. Yun yung ano natin. Kaya nga we're looking at medyo tatawid tayo, no? Kaya nga critical yung 2028 eh.
Di, tatawid talaga tayo kasi kasi papunta na tayo sa election, and we just mentioned, of course, walang kinalaman sa sinasabi natin nito, but Sara Duterte still looks like the favorite to be the next president of the Philippines. And it's not like Bongo is also not doing bad if ever lang Sara doesn't run for whatever reason.
Well, maybe ano yan, Sara will run for president, Bongo, with or without Sara, will run for vice president. So we have those two leading the country. So yun yung ano natin eh, yun yung worst case scenario natin eh, as a liberal democratic state. Eh. And you don't need actually China to be part of the process. We are also good at making our lives miserable.
kung kanina we talked about method of madness, tayong madness is the method, di ba? Parang ganun lang,
Yeah.
like self-sabotage lang talaga yan.
True.
So, operationally, what is still the advice now would you give? What are the lessons we have learned from asymmetrical warfare? Kasi ang daming usapan about drones, about asymmetrical warfare, but as we see in the case of Venezuela, as we see what Russia is doing to Ukraine, and then also and there are different interpretations of what happened during the 12-day war. Isn't there also a limitation to asymmetrical warfare capability that at the end of the day, having cutting-edge conventional military capability can still make all the difference in the world?
Okay, yung immediate concern ko on my plate right now, we need to fix yung ano natin, yung inroads ng China in our local society, in our government. Kasi that is the more insidious one. Eh. Of course. Second would be yung cyber, and third would be yung disinformation. Nakikita man natin, di ba, sa Facebook eh. They're escalating dun sa public opinion space. Okay. And we need to counter that kasi that creates kumbaga vulnerability for us. Now, yung on the hard power part, of course, yung asymmetric side, when we do asymmetric response or calculations, you have to address ano ba yung strength ng kabila that I'm trying to address. So as far as the Navy is concerned, Navy naman ako, we always look at the PLA Navy Surface Fleet as yung operational center of gravity ng China in the South China Sea. Okay? So ang calculation namin doon is we do not have the shipbuilding gravitas to actually compete with China ship for ship. So that's why ang solution namin doon, asymmetric, was let's buy a land-based anti-ship missile system. Kaya yun yung justification for the BrahMos. The second one, which didn't take off, was let's buy a submarine. Kasi a submarine, you only need one, and that has yung battle space effect niyan is as if you have maybe a fleet. Yun yung comparison nun. Right now, we're buying more ships from Korea. That's okay. But at some point, ang argument ko kasi dyan a frigate is a floating target in the South China Sea.
Unlike a submarine, yeah.
Yeah. So, why risk? Okay. That's, yung other aspect of an asymmetric solution is, we don't have to fight in the West Philippine Sea in a conflict scenario kasi wala tayong ano dyan it is not militarily defensible. Okay, in wartime. But in peacetime, of course, we need to protect our exclusive economic zone kasi kailangan niya ng ating fisher folks. And kailangan din yan because it's also our energy resource. But in wartime, that's not defensible. So we need to retreat back to our 7 archipelagic strait or sea lines of communication. So doon yung ano natin, doon yung final stand natin, yun yung do or die position natin. Okay? And those are easily more controllable or controlled as far as the Navy is concerned. So that means, ano yung asymmetric solution mo? You buy more of the fast boats that similar to what we got from Israel and combine that with the drones or unmanned systems para meron kang swarm. May swarming
Fast
effect.
boats na have a proper radar system. I was told na medyo bulag yung mga ibang binili natin.
Ganun ba? Well, of course, siguro improve on the electronic warfare systems as well.
How last point, Admiral, how cautiously optimistic you are that there is a spasm of awareness about, you can see all the caveat I'm putting here, about what needs to be done to adjust to this new world disorder that we're facing right now, as far as the Philippine strategic elite is concerned.
Ang weakness kasi natin, Richard, we have a very weak strategic culture in our government. I'm not blaming this government. Kumbaga, it is what it is. It's basically subculture yan, or cultural considerations. So that's something that we need to sort of build up on our own. Okay. Now, having said that, with what we have, we need to actually have a running conversation within government to address yung different And that means kailangan mag-usap-usap. Kasi nangyari, parang nakita natin, I think you're familiar with it, minsan nag-stovepipe yung mga agencies natin. Okay na lang yung stovepiping pero minsan they're also attacking each other. Parang they're canceling each other.
Yeah.
So that creates its own problems. Kumbaga, there are occasions that we are our own worst enemy as far as strategic planning is concerned.
On that not very reassuring point, I mean, we went from discussing the method to the madness of Trump's strategy to the how madness is the method when it comes to Philippine strategic culture. Thank you so much, Admiral Ong. Are there recent writings and publications that you want our audience to check to have a better understanding of the nuances of your analysis at saka yung mga nitty-gritties ng inyong mga proposals at saka mga kailangan natin gawin sa ating bansa para naman maka-adjust tayo dito sa bagong international order?
Well, they're posted in, I think, the Philippine Star at saka sa Rappler and with StratBase on defense posturing and how to improve, let's say, the Coast Guard and the Army in terms of structure at capabilities. Tapos merong nilabas na libro si Dilo, Professor Dilo Manhit, StratBase, which covers a lot of topics, including the economy. Okay. And one of my articles was posted there as one chapter on the theory of victory.
The Theory of the Victory. That's a very, very important paper kasi hanggang ngayon, marami nagtatanong, ano bang endgame natin? Right? Because we're up against a superpower. We're allied to another superpower that has all sorts of different, strategic interest and shifting attitudes and posture, at least on the surface. So saan tayo pupunta? What is the realistic expectation for the Philippines and coordinates of foreign policy agency? So I really, really suggest everyone to check Admiral Ong, who, in my opinion, if Ronald Llamas is the greatest political analyst, if Justice Carpio is the greatest legal luminary, ikaw naman, Admiral Ong, you're the greatest strategist sa ating bansa. Thank you very much, Admiral Ong, for joining us. Oh, hindi ako nagsabi Justice, sabi ko Admiral. You have to give me credit. I was very aware. Kahit back to back kayo. Salamat, Admiral Romel Ong, retired Admiral Romel Ong, for that very comprehensive discussion. And I hope okay lang nilagay ko yung isa pang map, no? Because it perfectly jives dun sa map mo kanina about the three-directional strategic push of China. I felt you have to put it in the global context para makita mo naman how US and Russia could also look at that. Thank you very much, Admiral, and looking forward to more discussion in the coming weeks and all as we monitor developments in the West Philippine Sea and beyond. God bless po and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you, Richard. Goodbye.